The phone call came from Mallorca at 7 o'clock in the morning, Manila time. Alex was still processing everything, still sitting with the weight of what had happened just hours earlier. Her name appearing beside the number 29 on the Wimbledon seedings list, making her the first Filipino player in history to earn a singles seed at a Grand Slam tournament. And then her phone rang. She answered. And on the other end of the line was a voice she had known since she was 13 years old. A voice that had helped shape her game, guide her development, and quietly influence every step of her journey from a homesick teenager in Spain to one of the most electrifying young stars in professional tennis. It was Rafael Nadal. But he wasn't calling simply to say congratulations. According to those close to the story, he was calling to send a message. Not to Alex. To the entire tennis world. In a declaration that immediately sent shockwaves through the sport, the 22-time Grand Slam champion identified Alex Eala as the dark horse of Wimbledon 2026. Not a prediction. A warning. So, what exactly did Nadal say? What did he see in Alex that convinced him she could shake up the entire tournament? And why are so many people calling it the most powerful endorsement of the entire grass court season? Stay with us. Because this story starts long before Wimbledon. It starts in Mallorca. In 2018, when a 13-year-old girl stepped off a plane with a tennis racket over her shoulder and a dream that felt impossibly big. Chapter 1. The seeding that made history back in Manila. On June 24, 2026, the moment arrived quietly. No dramatic announcement. No special ceremony. Just a number appearing beside a name on the WTA rankings page shortly after midnight. Number 29. Alex Eala. And yet that single, quiet update sent waves of excitement crashing through the tennis world and across the entire Philippines simultaneously. With that seeding, the 21-year-old from Quezon City had achieved something no Filipino player, male or female, had ever accomplished before in the history of Grand Slam tennis. She was the first, the absolute first. And in a country where tennis had long existed on the margins of sporting conversation, the significance of that number was impossible to overstate. It hadn't come from nowhere. Her stunning semi-final run at the Berlin Open had completely transformed the trajectory of her season. Match after match, she had played without fear, taking down world number 2 Elena Rybakina and former world number 3 Elena Ostapenko in consecutive matches, announcing herself to the tennis establishment not as a surprise anymore, but as a reality. That run lifted her from number 35 to number 30 in the world rankings. It earned her seeding protection at Wimbledon, shielding her from the top players in at least the opening rounds of the most prestigious tournament on earth. Philippine flags that had waved proudly through the stands in Berlin were already making their way to the grounds of the All England Club. The familiar chants were already beginning to echo across the pristine grass. The excitement was building with every passing hour. And thousands of miles away in Mallorca, one of the greatest champions the sport has ever produced was watching all of it unfold, with a knowing smile. Chapter 2, Mallorca, 2018. The beginning to understand why Nadal's endorsement carries a different kind of weight, you need to go back to where this story truly begins. Mallorca, 2018, the Rafa Nadal Academy. A 13-year-old Alex Eala stepped off the plane with a tennis racket slung over her shoulder and a dream that was bigger than anything she fully understood yet. She had left her family behind in Quezon City, traveled thousands of miles across the world, arrived at an academy founded by one of the greatest champions in tennis history. It was not easy. She was homesick. She was uncertain. She was a long way from everything she had ever known. But she was also determined. Completely, quietly, ferociously determined. Over the next 5 years, the Rafa Nadal Academy became her second home. It was where Alex transformed from a talented junior prospect into a professional athlete capable of competing with the very best players in the world. Surrounded by world-class facilities, elite coaching, and a culture built entirely on discipline, humility, resilience, and relentless hard work, she absorbed every lesson the place had to offer. The philosophy developed by Tony Nadal, the same philosophy that had powered Rafael Nadal's entire legendary career, became deeply embedded in her approach to the sport. Day after day, year after year, point after point. When she graduated in 2023, she left Mallorca transformed. The wide-eyed teenager who had arrived with nothing but hope had become a confident young woman ready to challenge the world on the biggest stages in tennis. But the connection never ended. The bond between mentor and student remained quiet, strong, genuine. Then in November 2025, nearly a year after Rafael Nadal's emotional retirement from professional tennis, the 22-time Grand Slam champion returned to a practice court. Not for a comeback. Not for another tournament. For a private training session with a player he genuinely believed in. The footage captured everything. Nadal, relaxed, smiling, completely at ease, exchanging forehands with Alex on a practice court in Mallorca. And then the moment that the entire tennis world couldn't stop watching on a loop, Alex unleashed a powerful shot that flew clean past the former world number one. And Nadal burst out laughing. Not the frustrated laugh of a competitor who'd lost a point. The genuine, unguarded, full laugh of a mentor watching a young player become exactly who he always believed she could be. The pride on his face was impossible to miss. Afterward, Nadal shared his thoughts publicly on Instagram. It felt great to be back on a tennis court. It was great to practice with you, Alex. Next time I will be stronger. Alex was overwhelmed. She said training alongside one of the greatest players in history was something she had never truly imagined would become real. Training with Rafa is something people and young kids can only dream about, she said. It was such a pleasure to share the court with him. This is the first time I've ever hit with him in my life. It's a memory that will last forever. Nadal had offered more than just court time as well. He shared technical insights about her forehand, small adjustments, specific details that only someone who had spent decades mastering the craft could identify and articulate. This was the transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next. One of the greatest champions in the sport's history investing his time, his experience, and his wisdom in a young player whose future was getting brighter with every passing month. And now, as Wimbledon 2026 approached, that mentor was preparing to make a statement. Chapter 3. The interview that changed everything Mallorca. June 2026. The Rafa Nadal Academy. The interview began like countless others before it. Questions about retirement. About the current state of men's tennis. About the memories that defined an extraordinary career. Reflections on his Wimbledon triumphs in 2008 and 2010. Discussions about his legendary rivalries with Federer and Djokovic. Stories about learning to master a surface that had once challenged him more than any other. Everything felt routine, familiar, expected. And then the conversation shifted toward the next generation. Nadal's demeanor changed in an instant. He leaned forward slightly. His eyes narrowed with focus. His voice became more deliberate. The entire room grew noticeably quieter. There's one player I've been watching, he said. She's different. She's special. And I think she's going to surprise a lot of people at Wimbledon. The interviewer asked for a name immediately. Nadal didn't hesitate for even a second. Alex. The answer landed like a thunderclap in the room. One of the most respected figures in tennis history, a 22-time Grand Slam champion, a 2-time Wimbledon winner, had just publicly identified a 21-year-old from the Philippines as his dark horse pick for the 2026 championships. And he was just getting started. I've known her since she was 13 years old, Nadal continued. She arrived at the academy as a homesick teenager, far away from her family, trying to adapt to a completely new environment. She was uncertain, just like many young players are. But she had something you cannot teach. He paused, chose his next words carefully. The room waited. What separates Alex from so many players is her fight. That refusal to accept that she doesn't belong. He pointed to the moments that had defined her rise, the difficult situations that would have broken a less determined player, the battles when the odds were stacked against her, the long rain delays that disrupted momentum, the hostile environments far from home, the pressure of performing on the biggest stages with the whole world watching. She doesn't panic, Nadal said. She doesn't disappear when things get difficult. She finds a way. The interviewer pressed further. If Alex was genuinely capable of a deep Wimbledon run, what specifically made her dangerous on grass? Nadal smiled, clearly enjoying the question. First, she's a left-hander. That's an advantage on any surface, but especially on grass. The angles are different. The serve moves away from opponents in uncomfortable ways. She also has a natural slice that stays very low. And on grass, low is everything. But he wasn't finished. She understands when to move forward. She doesn't stay behind the baseline waiting for rallies to develop. When she sees an opportunity, she attacks. That's becoming rare among young players. Many of them just want to hit every ball harder and harder. Alex thinks ahead. She sees patterns. She anticipates what comes next. Then came the question that the entire room had been building toward. Does Alex remind you of anyone? For the first time during the entire interview, Nadal's smile widened into a full grin. She reminds me of a young left-hander I used to know. The room erupted. The answer was delivered as a joke, but everyone present understood exactly what was underneath it. Nadal wasn't comparing achievements or suggesting Alex would become the next Rafael Nadal. He was acknowledging something far more fundamental, the qualities that rankings and statistics can never fully capture. The left-handed creativity, the relentless competitiveness, the willingness to keep fighting when everything turns against you, the absolute refusal to accept defeat simply because the situation looks impossible. Those were the qualities that had defined Nadal's own legendary career. And now he was saying he saw them, genuinely, unmistakably, in Alex Eala. She's also been coached by Tony, he added, referring to his uncle and the man who had guided him from childhood to Grand Slam greatness. That influence matters. Tony teaches discipline, responsibility, and respect for the game. Those values stay with a player for life. Then Nadal looked directly into the camera. Mark my words. Alex is the dark horse of Wimbledon 2026. She's not just there to participate. She's there to compete. And she's going to make some noise. Chapter 4. The world reacts. Those words changed everything within minutes. Clips of the interview began spreading across every social media platform simultaneously. Tennis fans shared the video thousands of times before the hour was out. Sports networks replayed the comments on loop. Analysts dissected every single sentence. What made the endorsement so powerful wasn't simply who Nadal was. It was how rarely he made bold, specific predictions about individual players. When one of the greatest champions in the history of sport publicly names someone as a serious threat, people stop what they're doing and pay attention. #AlexDarkHorse began trending almost immediately. Filipino fans celebrated what they saw as the ultimate validation of everything they had believed for years. Tennis commentators scrambled to reevaluate her draw, her recent results, and her realistic chances on grass at the All England Club. The reactions poured in from every corner of the globe. Nadal just called Alex the dark horse of Wimbledon. He said she's going to surprise people. He's known her since she was 13 years old. That's not hype. That's knowledge. He trained her at his academy. He's practiced with her. He's seen how she handles pressure up close. If he's telling the world she's dangerous, people should pay attention. Others focus specifically on Nadal's reputation for being measured and precise with his praise. Nadal doesn't hand out compliments for free. He spent his entire career competing against absolute champions. He knows exactly what he's looking at when he watches a player. And that was the point that resonated most deeply across the tennis community. This wasn't a celebrity endorsement. This wasn't a headline-grabbing comment designed to generate attention. This was the considered, informed, deeply personal assessment of someone who had watched Alex Eala grow up, from a nervous 13-year-old stepping off a plane in Majorca to a 21-year-old seated at Wimbledon, representing an entire nation on the sport's grandest stage. He had seen her at her most vulnerable. He had seen her at her most powerful. He had practiced with her. He had shared the court with her. He had invested in her. And after all of that, after knowing her for 8 years across the full arc of her development, this is what he chose to say to the world. She is the dark horse of Wimbledon 2026. Closing. The stage is set for years. Alex Eala had been building toward a moment like this. Every sacrifice in Majorca, Every training session that pushed her past her limits. Every difficult loss that taught her something the victories never could. Every breakthrough victory that announced, quietly at first, then louder and louder, that she belonged at this level. All of it had led here. To Wimbledon. To a seeding no Filipino had ever earned before. To an endorsement from one of the greatest champions the sport has ever produced. To a spotlight brighter than anything she had ever stood in. And somewhere in London, preparing for her opening round match at the All England Club, Alex Eala received perhaps the most powerful validation of her entire professional career. The man who had helped build her, who had known her since before the world knew her name, had spoken to the world. Now one question echoed across the entire tennis community, from Mallorca to Manila, from London to New York. Had Rafael Nadal just identified Wimbledon's biggest surprise before a single ball had even been struck? The grass courts were ready. The draw was set. History was waiting. And Alex Eala, the girl from Quezon City who had crossed an ocean at 13 years old with nothing but a racket and a dream, was ready to answer. If this gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe to Tennis Unfiltered right now. We cover the moments that define this sport, and the Wimbledon chapter of Alex Eala's story is just beginning. Turn on your notifications. You will not want to miss what comes next.